Paul is a very special person in the dating industry. Most of you know him from prior conferences and for being very long term in the industry. He's really I would say he's the father of the mobile dating industry. I would say he's the father because he started the app that really grew and morphed and inspired us all initially with Grindr, of course. And he was the CEO of Grindr through 2018, and now we have him back. He started Motto. And so he's here to talk about Motto and some of the challenges and opportunities in the dating industry. And we're going to do an interview. Great. Perfect. How you doing, Joel?
Very good.
Good. So we go ways back. I remember iDate. We go back to iDate years.
Yes.
I remember a conference in Los Angeles, which I think was the first time I met you all those years ago.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful to have you back in the dating industry with Motto. And the burning question I have for you, and I think quite a few of us would have for you, is how is it this time around? How is starting Motto so very different than when you started Grindr? What are some of the challenges that you're experiencing?
Yeah, I mean, there's there's pros and cons to starting an app in 2022. So we launched in November. Let me give you a little bit of background on Motto, and then tell you about some of the challenges. So you all know Grindr, so I probably don't need to explain Grindr to you. So, but Motto actually grew kind of in a way of response to Grindr and some of the other hookup apps for queer people. And the idea is that those apps are great, and there's a lot of good to them, but part of their design is allowing people to be anonymous and to be in our community we call it DL, and that was a great kind of experience. That was a great feature for maybe 10, 15 years ago. But now, we're in a different world. So Motto is all about verification, real identity. So we require you to upload at least 3 face photos. We require you to do a selfie with a gesture. We compare those photos to that selfie. And so everybody in the community is verified. We even go as far as to look at the timestamps and the metadata on the photos and compare that to and make sure the photos are recent. It's crazy to see how many photos we reject from 7 years ago, 6 years ago. The oldest I saw was 10 years old, and so so that's part of our service. The other thing is we've done is kind of it's a batch view, so kind of similar to Hinge, where you get a certain amount of profiles per day, and then you get to react to those, and then you get to have a chat with them. And so part of the idea here is to, with Grindr and Scruff and some of these other apps, Sniffies, you're spending a lot of time refreshing, waiting for someone to come on, and you're just waiting, refreshing. And so I think on some of the straight apps, there's a lot of swiping. It's kind of these endless rabbit holes. And so we've kind of tried to stop that. And limit how many people you can see a day, with the idea that we want you to not spend hours. Grindr users spend about an hour a day on their app, which is great in some ways, but not so great for mental health and getting people around. So that's a background on the app. In terms of differences, let me start with the positives. The positives are the technology. So we use React Native. So we write one app to both iOS and Android. So we don't have to have 2 different teams, iOS and Android. In the Grindr days, we had iOS team, Android team, we have a BlackBerry team even. We had the Windows team. It was just all these different teams and very hard to, just a lot more complicated. The cloud is amazing, all the different layers. I mean, chat servers. At Grindr, we have to build our own chat servers. We use Sendbird as our provider, and it's just out of the box and can scale to many, many users. And that was one of the big challenges at Grindr, was handling scale. And so today, scale is not, we don't have tremendous scale, so we haven't tested it, but it's a lot easier today to scale. So that's, I think, all the positives. The negatives is, it's a very crowded, very, very crowded space. And I'm sure everyone who's here is experiencing this is, we all have great ideas with our services. Um, and it's very hard to get people's attention. So whether you're competing with Tinder or Bumble or Grindr, or maybe it's an offline business, it's all very difficult. And I think even if it's, even if you have a traditional, say, matchmaking business or an offline business, you're essentially competing with Tinder and Bumble, regardless of your space, whether you're offline or online. And my sense is it's very, very difficult to get people's attention, very get people to download another app. And even if and I think this was a bit of our challenge is that we essentially, I think, built a better experience, but that alone I think doesn't make for a successful business. What makes for a successful business is having a lot of users. Um, I think historically I've probably spent too much time on product and not enough on time on marketing. And now I spend 90% of my time on marketing and growing the network. The product is never good enough. There's never enough features. There's never, there's just never enough. And so what I've tried to get the team away from is saying, okay, one more feature, and then we're going to feel like this is what we're happy with. I just don't. I just don't think it works that way. I think what really is important is getting liquidity of users, and that's what we're really focused on. So we've gone through the route of focusing just on New York City, and focusing all our efforts on here. And it creates a bit of a challenge because one of our good channels is social. And social is not tremendously targeted. I mean, you can target the ads, but we've had some videos that go viral. And we had one video that went viral. We got about 1,500 downloads and profiles created, but the vast majority of them were outside of New York. So that's a bit of a challenge with that approach. But it's still the approach that we've taken.
Gotcha. So I'm hearing authenticity is paramount and real people. And some of the problems with building an app have gone away, of course. Things are more harmonized and easier, but the growth aspect is a bit more challenging these days. So
I'll say one more thing about growing. I mean, my sense is, we've all seen ChatGPT, and my sense is in a few years, creating software will be very, very easy.
Yeah.
So this challenge of saying, hey, I want to have all these features, or I'm going to build a better app, that's going to be less relevant, even more so, because being able, there will be, I don't know, we have 2,000 businesses in the space. I think it will grow by 10x or something, because anyone who has an idea in a few years will be able to build something. So I think that makes it even more important, the value of the network, the value of the people, because that is going to be the big challenge for all these different services, is to grow a network. So I think that what I mentioned earlier is becoming even more true, and it's just going to be a race to getting users. And so I think the incumbents, and they also will benefit from the ability to iterate much faster. They probably won't go as fast as a startup will, because of because they don't want to, they're more risk averse than usually startups are, for a number of reasons. But the ability to iterate software will fundamentally, I think, change things. But will also make it a lot easier for folks who have a user base to be a dominant player.
It's quite shocking what we're seeing on ChatGPT now. We're experimenting with it, and Midjourney as well, in terms of how they can help enhance us with OPW. And from the programming standpoint, it just looks like it's really going to revolutionize um, the ease of spinning up apps and the quickness of development. So it seems like now it's the incumbents that are situated very well, and the brand leaders and the companies that really have a clear set of values that are, it comes down to the question is, why are we here? Why are we on this dating app, right? I think that seems to be something that's going to be more paramount. It's like, okay, well, we could go to Tinder, but what's the feel of Tinder? What are the people on Tinder for? Well, we could go to Motto, but what are the people on Motto? So what do they stand for? What's the values? What's the set of behaviors that should be exhibited there? So in some ways, the more that's defined, that looks like that's going to define the next generation of dating. So would you say you're competing with Grindr in that aspect? I mean, how are the values different from the likes of Grindr? How is the character different from, and the brand different from the likes of Grindr?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm competing. I think, yeah, I mean, we're competing. I don't think there's a world where somebody would stop using Grindr and just go to Motto. That's not a, I think most people use many apps, many services. I think I would imagine gay men probably use 2x or 3x what the number of apps. I would imagine it's probably 2 or 3 or 4 for straight people and maybe 7 or 8 for gay people. So I think there's room for a lot of people. And I think, our value proposition is very specific. Not everyone wants to have their face on an app in the gay community. It's taken for granted pretty much for, I can't imagine. Well, I guess there are some straight apps where you don't have to post your face, but I think that's by design. But generally speaking, it would be unthinkable to go on Tinder and somebody say and to have to ask for a photo of your face. So that's what people deal with on Grindr, and so to me that just seems ridiculous, and it's the way I guess I set that up. But it's so to me that just seems kind of strange. But it is the de facto, and we're hoping that the new de facto will be, or at least for a segment, would be authenticness, and not having to waste time in talking to people that you're not interested in.
So thank you for coming out to the Online Dating Investors Summit. That was a great occasion for us to meet up. We had 12 CEOs out to that and a lot of investors. And one of the things that was interesting, of course, we also had the match group out with half a dozen executives as well. So it's like 18, 20 people. One of the things that Match disclosed, which is quite interesting, was that they've actually, let's give you the exact verbiage. They said Match claims more LGBTQ representation than any other general dating app. And the segment has doubled in size for them. Didn't give a time frame, but they said that they doubled in size for them. I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Well, when I heard that, I thought, well, are they saying that they have more users in Grindr, more gay men than Grindr? And I actually spoke to them afterwards, and they if you listen to the wording, it's general dating apps. So I don't think she was putting Grindr in that category. So I think the overall answer is no. I don't think that they have more gay men. I think Grindr says that they have about 10 million monthly actives. So I think that's tremendous. I think that's great news that Match is serving this community. By the way, rumor has it they're launching a gay hookup app in the coming weeks. So I think that they will be further, literally investing time and money into this space. So I think that's tremendous. My sense also with Gen Z is that their sexuality is not as bucketed as my generation or other generations, and there's you hear about tremendous fluidity. And I actually asked, and I it's often you hear these generalizations about these generations, and you're like, okay, is that really true? And what? But my sense is it is. My sense is that folks, and it resonates even for me. It's like, I guess I was fluid when I was 17, 18, 19, 20. And so it kind of makes sense. You're kind of discovering where you are. So I think there's, sexual fluidity, there's gender fluidity. And so, I think that that's really, uh, something that will probably stay with us and will probably continue to not just be, I think that will probably continue as they get older, maybe less to less degree, but yeah. So my overall perspective is it's great. The more attention to the queer community, the better. And though I don't think it's well done when it's run by straight people. I try to build a straight app back in before Tinder, called Blender, and it didn't work because I wasn't, we didn't account for the way women date and socialize, and we didn't have a woman who ran product or something like that. We just assumed, and Blender was very similar to Grindr, and the genius of Tinder was the mutual match, and because people on Blender would get, or women on Blender would get, hundreds of messages. We also had, in Grindr you can send photos and chat, so and so women would get lots of dick pics, and they were, that was not something they wanted. And so, it's interesting to think about, when you're serving a market, to really really understand that market, because, if you're a straight person running a gay business, or maybe even vice versa, or yeah, definitely vice versa, I don't think it works.
Yeah, couldn't agree more with you. Lifestyle, geo, religion, whatever the focus of a dating app, it's so important to have people on the team who know it in earnest, very, very deeply. I cut my teeth at Friend Finder many years ago, in 2003, and I was their pet Brit, actually. But God, you got to know the niche inside out. By the way, I just sent you a link, everybody, to the last interview that we did, Joel. I interviewed you back in 2010, 13. It's been 13 years since I interviewed you, so it's great to have this fireside.
I'll have to
And
watch
that
that
actually
again.
came up in our interview. You were about to launch Blender. And that, I guess one of my questions for you is, having been through that experience, what would you say were key learnings from spinning up Blender? I mean, that was quite exciting time. It got Grindr, massive success. Okay, Blender's starting. What did you learn from that experience?
Well, I think I mean, what I just kind of said was, just the importance of understanding the user and being the user. I think is probably the biggest takeaway there. Had we understood that women don't want to get dick pics in chat, women get flooded. If we had really figured those things out, we would have had a much better outcome.
Gotcha. So, folks, I'm going to ask another question or two. I'd just like to let you know, if you've got questions for Joel, you can actually go to the questions section and vote up questions. And I'm going to pick some questions. Looks like, there are some questions there. Great. Oh, quite a few. Okay, got 3 questions. So I'll ask one more question, and I'm going to dive into the Q&A. So you can take some questions from our leadership dating community as well, CXO community. So my question to you, for the folks who are starting up dating apps right now, you're going through this right now, you're in the arena. What advice would you have? And I asked you this at the Online Dating Investor Summit as well. So same question. What advice would you have for somebody who is spinning up a dating app that's got $1 million raised in pocket, ready to spend? Where should they put that money to spend it most wisely? What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, I think I touched on it a little bit before, where it's less about product. I mean, you obviously have to have a different product, right? So if you're copying Tinder or Grindr or really, that's not going to work, right? And if you're uh, copying just if you're changing it a little bit, it's probably not going to work either. So there has to be a very meaningful difference, and it can't just be meaningful to you. It has to be meaningful to others, right? And so. Um, um, and it's got to really solve a problem. Um, my husband launched a video dating app a few years ago, targeted everyone. Most of his users were straight. It was called Curtain, and I think the mistake there for me and him was to assume, okay, and I still believe this inherently, that video will one day um, video just makes sense in the in dating, right? But just because it makes sense and just because it's inevitable doesn't mean it's gonna happen now. And doesn't mean that it's you can build a network ground up from it. So video might work very well as an add-on feature. It may not. But to build a community around, let's say, video dating, um, just because you think it's inevitable, just because you think everywhere else is video, right? Um, at least for him, didn't work, right? And I still haven't really seen any video dating apps that have broken out, and you say, okay, these are mass adoption. So, so no one else has figured it out. So that's the challenge, is to figure out how do you get lots of users. And I think that's the most important question. It's not, hey, the question should not be, how do I build a better product? I think in a lot of other spaces that might be a good question, but in dating, I think the question has to be, how do I get a million users or 100? I think 100. It depends on what you're doing and how you're doing it, but where. But it's something like at least 100,000 users, right? So how do I get 100,000 users? How do I get 500,000 users? How do I get a million users? Because we're all competing with services that have that kind of scale. Um, so I think that's the most important question. And and then I would spend as much of my money getting those people. And I think the other part of the question is, with $1 million, you're not going to get 100,000 people. So how do I build a service that will allow people to essentially to go organic? How can I build something that will go viral? And that's, I mean, there's no answer to that question. Who knows what will go viral? But so I think that's the dream really is, right. You build something, you spend some money, and then it goes viral. So if you're able to do that, that's amazing. That's what I was able to do with Grindr. We didn't really spend any money on marketing because it just went viral. It was just, but that was a different, essentially a different decade, or a different, more than a decade, a different generation. So that's what I would really focus on. How are we going to get 100,000 users? And if you don't have a path to doing that, then keep on iterating, because don't start spending that $1 million until you can answer that question.
And the lead-in, a question from Brad Jones from Meet Kingsters, he actually makes a point about paid acquisition and asks, what role do you think paid acquisition has at this early stage? And I'd add to that, how to best use it. I mean, how do you prime the pumps with paid acquisition?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to do that. I mean, there's no other way. You can't go viral at 0 users. It's probably just not going to happen. Um, unless the app is so revolutionary. Again, ChatGPT is a great example of this, but that's also not a network of products, so that's different. But for a network product, which inherently I think we all are as a dating businesses, paid, I think, is the only way to start. Maybe there's some thoughts on other ways. I'd love to hear folks, if folks have ideas in chat to say how else you could start. But I think paid is great, and probably the only channel to do that. And by the way, when I say paid, that means that could be events, that could be affiliate, that can be anything. But you're paying money. It's as opposed to organic, is in my mind how I'm defining it. But events, we've done events. We also pay kind of affiliates who we pay a bounty per profile that's approved. That's actually been really, really helpful for us, is leveraging other people's networks to get them to build our network. But it's tough. It's just a really, really tough environment.
I think we could do a whole conference on this, actually, couldn't we?
And the other challenge is, is raising money. I mean, again, my experience with my husband is that he spoke to 160 VCs, 160.
Yeah.
And he kind of got a term sheet, but it didn't really pan out. And they had good retention, they had good numbers. And it's unfortunate, but a lot of VCs and professional money don't want to touch dating. They don't, for a number of reasons. And so, it's very, very, it's daunting. How do you scale when you need $1 million is just not going to get you that far, unfortunately. You need a lot more than that. And so how do you get that money when a lot of traditional ways of getting money are just not available to us?
Is it enough to get you out the gate?
What's that?
$1 million.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. So question from Adam Cohen-Aslati. Will there be community features added to the app, or is this for pure dating? Adam's the head of Talkify, I think CEO now, right? Adam Cohen-Aslati. Will there be community features added to the app, or is this for pure dating?
Yeah, I mean, I think, for me, these, I'll say this. First, I need to build a network, right? And so first I need to get critical mass and get people in the app. Once I have that, I can start doing other things. And so certainly, I'm not quite sure what you mean by community. I have a sense of it, but the answer is yes. But again, first is the focus on getting critical mass. And there are some community features that could help us get critical mass, I think. But not all of them. And so certainly something that we'll want to look at. And but again, I'm just laser focused. I tell the team, listen, the only focus, and people ask, oh, when are you going to expand beyond New York? It's like, I have no idea. My only focus is getting critical mass in New York. Because if I can't do it in New York, I won't be able to do it elsewhere. So
let the people vote.
So that I'm just laser focused on getting critical mass with my current product in New York, so that's the only focus.
And Naveen Kutri, who's the CEO of Playdate, asked about Facebook and Insta, for example. How's that gone for you? Has it been a bit of a pain, or have they been quite good to work with?
We've just recently started advertising on them. Well, we had a problem with our Instagram account. They kept on suspending it. They said it was a bug. They keep on bringing it back. I don't know why they do that. It seems to be resolved now. We didn't even really post anything, and they kept on suspending us. TikTok, a lot of our ads get suspended. They now said we have to go to a managed account, and that should be better. So yeah, I mean, it's challenging. I mean, TikTok, they don't allow, you have to be in the App Store for a year before you can advertise on TikTok. So this is another example of how it is hard to compete against an incumbent. Is, TikTok is a great channel, and if you can't advertise there for a year, wow, that's just horrible. And so it's daunting because we have a lot of different aspects. And another problem we have is, Instagram, on all these apps, we can't target gay men or queer people. And so that ability was taken away from us a few years ago. And so that's another challenge. So it's just like challenge. I'm a guy who likes challenges, so it doesn't bother me too much, but it's a challenge. You gotta fight it out.
Well, my greatest hope is that these events help you connect with other individuals in the industry and form little non-competitive circles, and hopefully hash out some of these, share some of these challenges, and turn them into opportunities. So, Joel, really appreciate your time today. We're going to run this on OPW in a few weeks' time as well. And welcome back to the dating industry. It's just really nice to have you back.
It's great to be back. This is my passion. This is what I love to do. And even though I'm competitive with one of, as someone called my baby, my first child, it's my life calling. So it's great to be back.
Wonderful, wonderful, good. Thank you, Joel.
Thanks.